I was skeptical of some of the approach with lockdowns. I didn't think lockdowns were, I thought in the balance of economy and psychological factors and what the data were showing in lockdowns, I don't think it's overwhelming. Now, some people, there's some epidemiologists who would shout me down right now. Just for saying that. So, but in the medical profession, those who have been thoroughly saying, there's this conspiracy and vaccines don't work and they're going to change you into chimeras and change your DNA, there's a call from the major medical associations to actually take their license away and take their certification away. And I think it's quite warranted. In Ohio, there's a real controversy. The physician who furthered the that the vaccine makes you magnetized, and she's a longtime anti-vaxxer, that she'll come to meetings with the press and she'll say, well, the data show, she just completely misrepresents data, and she has a long history of misrepresenting data and creating her own medical conspiracy issue, and that's called quackery. It's quackery. And she, in a better day, we just call her quack and we kick her out of the profession. So that professionally, I think, is going to happen. And I hope professionally in medicine we actually have a tightening of, if people are really concerned about protections, that what they're taking is safe, we have a whole class of medications that aren't tested for safety and efficacy. They're not regulated by the FDA. And I hope that we have a reaction against that. But it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that doesn't want any regulation. But you don't know what you're getting if you're buying something from Costco and it makes certain claims about your health, you don't even know what you're getting. You don't know if it's even pure. I mean, there's studies showing that's not even what's on the label sometimes. I'm not picking on Costco. I'm just saying that's one of the largest sellers of supplements. Some supplements do work, but again, that's called medicine. So professionally, you do, now again, me saying that, if someone's trying to sell you supplements in your parish, I'm not saying that they're a heretic. I just think they don't know medicine, okay? And there are some physicians that are trying to actually do good science on supplements. Okay, the Ohio State University has an alternative medicine division, and I know some of them, and some of them are Christians, and some of them know the horrible data around supplements, and they're trying to correct that to say, let's put them to the test and see if they work. So within medicine, one of the answers is we need to tighten the ship. I mean, there's some people out there that really should not be practicing medicine, and maybe bishops need to do the same thing. That if these people are dropping H-bombs over things that are not related to the faith, but that is a question. I'm not a bishop. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a priest. I'll let the bishops and the priests and the theologians deal with that. So maybe sometimes healing is cutting out the tumors. Now, that could go on the internet and make a life of its own. I'm not saying I know what a tumor is. I'm not that kind of doctor. I do take care of cancer patients, so the analogy fits, but I'm not a bishop or a priest or a theologian. So where that line is drawn, sometimes healing, you have to have some exacting therapy. If they want my advice on that, I could probably help offer an opinion, but I'm not an expert in that, so I won't. So how do we live as Orthodox Christians? I think we have to be flexible. The rigidity, when you say masks are evil, they're part of the great communist conspiracy, and darn it, I mean, I'm a Texan. If you listen to my podcast, I'm a Texan. If someone tells me you can't do it, it makes me want to do it all the more. I mean, that's just part of I'm not just an American, but a Texan. It's deep within me. I'm a contrarian in that way. So if someone says you must wear a mask, and I can find a scrap of evidence that says I don't think masking is necessary, I'm going to rail against masks. But if my bishop tells me wear a mask because, this is a problem. And then when you're a physician and you're caring for immunocompromised cancer patients like me, and they're in your parish, if you're standing next to one of my patients who's immunocompromised, and I don't care if you have symptoms or not, and you don't have a mask on or they don't, I'm going to say, get a mask on. I mean, this is one of the hard things. I was talking to one of the faculty that there's a psychologist that deals with kind of cultish behavior. And one of the cultish behaviors is that you have to suspend your observation of reality. And generally, just to defend, that psychologist, if you go down his I think 6 points. Orthodoxy doesn't meet them, just to say. I mean, we have some cultish tendencies, but it doesn't meet any of those 6 points. So this is not someone who's anti-religion. This is someone that studies real cults. You know, the David Koresh and Jonestown and those kinds of people, right? Well, one of the things that cults do is they make you suspend your sense of reality. And we know that there's a greater reality beyond our perception. I'm tainted. I'm darkened with sin. I don't know reality as it should be. I know that my perception and my irrationality can bring my self-deception. That there's many things that I think I know that aren't true. That great Mark Twain quote that is so apropos for COVID is, it's not that people don't know much, it's they know so much that ain't so. You know? And when we have a clouded perception, when we have the stain of sin upon us, our perception and our reasoning are all off sometimes. But let me back up 1 second. So, but when we're asked to completely suspend what we know to be true in our experience, it's difficult. And I'm just going to, please, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong here. When people say or forward that there's a force field when you enter a temple and you can never get infected, I just have to think, I have to suspend something I think may be true. I don't know it's completely true. I'm fallible. I may be wrong on this, but I know I've been not sick, and I've been in the temple of God, and I've held a godson of mine who had the sniffles, and I have the sniffles the next day. And my medical mind would say, I got the sniffles from my godson, who I didn't hold outside of the temple of God, but I know I'm a sinner, and maybe it's synergistic, and I'm such a sinner that I can get infected, and more holy people can't. And when, I mean, again, I'm probably going the dangerous territory, but when someone says you can't, there's no death or anything holy, I mean, when I go to my lampada in the morning and I keep my lampada trimmed and my light is always burning, and it's not just a symbol of the prayer of my family, but it is a prayer of my family. You know, morning and evening prayers are done in front of this lampada and we keep it burning. But I know one morning after I heard someone make comments about, no evil can come out of, or no death, no evil can come from something holy. I agree, no evil can come from holiness. But I have to pull a dead moth from my lampada. That's a symbol of prayer. It's not the holy altar, but it's a symbol of prayer. Maybe it's because my prayers are unholy. Maybe it's because I'm not pious enough. Maybe the moth is attracted to the light and doesn't stay vigilant and dies in the oil. But that holy vessel, it's not the same as the Holy Eucharist. It's not the same. I'm trying to be careful, not go beyond. But I can say that prayer of my family, I can see a bug die. And I also can read that Saints Ananias and Sapphira dropped dead before the Holy Apostle Peter. And that those who worship the staff wrongly die for the staff. And that we pray that we may not drop dead as we partake of the holy mysteries unworthily. God can smite me however God smites me, and I'm not going to put a limit on God. Now, am I going to say that evil comes forth from the chalice? No, evil doesn't come forth from the chalice. But I am a sinner, and I can die however God so chooses. And if my immunocompromised cancer patient in my parish is there, I want people around her to wear masks. I want her to wear a mask because I don't want to put God to the test in that way. And I think it's actually a dangerous thing to say, if you only had enough faith. I hear that. I mean, that's something that Christian scientists say, and that the Protestants say, that Kenneth Copeland's and all the name it and claim it prosperity gospel people say. Maybe surely if I had faith as a mustard seed, how I could move mountains, but I can still die. In faith, so many are healed. And when I'm dealing with a charismatic family that says they want to pray for a miracle and they believe Lazarus was raised from the dead, I say caringly and compassionately, yes, I agree with you. I confess Lazarus was raised from the dead, but he's not with us now. For mysterious reasons, God, as we know, is Orthodox, because we sing it in the Troparia, why Lazarus was raised from the dead, to show us the foretaste of the resurrection of Christ. But for mysterious reasons, life was taken. God was pleased to take him in death. I'm not going to limit God in such ways. I can say that all things that come from the chalice of God are holy. But I can also say I can die from any way. And I think we may have mitigation strategies to try to control infections. And I think those are reasonable. And we do the best discernment we can. God does not require our perfection in reasoning, our perfection in perceiving everything. Thank God. That's why we again and again and again beseech the Lord for his mercy. Because I'm not perfect. Thank God there's not a guru out there that's perfect, or else we'd worship him and not Christ. Thank God there's not a jurisdiction that's really pure, or else we would long for them and we would long for it and not the kingdom. If you find a purer place, don't join it because you'll ruin it. Other questions? Yes, please.
I don't fully understand this, and I hesitate to ask, but because, like you said, have charity. I would like to know more of our Orthodox opinion on, as you said, I forget what you called them, the
HEK?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
those cells. And as you said, we partake in so many tainted things, we can't know for sure, and we pray for God's mercy. But I'm wondering, if we do know, wouldn't we want to stay away from it as much as possible and not encourage?
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
And I don't mean to be.
No, you're not argumentative.
Say anybody who's encouraging it is evil. I'm just saying, in my mind, I hear that and I go, oh, shouldn't we all kind of stay away from that?
It's a complete. So I'm going to state the question as I explained. So your question is about the further explanation of the HEK cells and how they can be consistent with an Orthodox Christian partaking of something that's touched them. Okay. That we know of. Yeah. So it's completely a rational type argument. It's a rational argument of moral agency. There's a moral chain of events that back at some point in time, there was an abortion, and can we benefit morally? Can we benefit materially from something that comes from that in the future? And you could have a fairly simple kind of proof texting from the saints. Proof texting happens on both sides of debates. I would warn you against proof texting. If you take passages from the Holy Fathers out of context, they can be powerful. And you have to realize that some of the Holy Fathers wrote with great vigor and making their rhetorical points very strongly that may not mean all the things you think they mean. Correct me, those who study the Holy Fathers more than I do, but that's my reading as well. So there's this distinction of distancing from sin. So from a moral agency, are you responsible for that abortion? Not directly. You haven't committed that abortion. And we can say abortion is a gross and heinous sin. Okay, there are some things. If I'm faced with a dilemma of a woman who's dying, and without I'm an ethicist for the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetrics and Gynecology. Okay, we are pro-life. We think elective abortion should not be done. Now, in my pro-life work, I try to encourage moms to be moms. I think that should be the pro-life encouragement. I was asked once if adoption was the answer for abortion. I said, no, chastity is. And then encouraging moms to be moms and empowering them to be moms. Some moms are not fit to be moms. They can't be. Drug addiction, psychiatric problems, other things. And adoption is a beautiful thing. So adoption is a beautiful thing. I'm not against adoption, but I am for motherhood. So our pro-life stance would be very clear. But if a woman is going to die and the baby, then we would say that an early separation, we're making a distinction here that some people would say is semantics, but I think it is an important one, an early separation from mother and child with the intent to try to save both lives. An abortion is an intent to kill the child, but early separation where both lives are being saved, even when you know the likelihood of saving the baby is low, an early separation may be justified. Now, in Western, I'm actually trying to answer your question, which will take me a little bit because I do what I do, and forgive me. In Western philosophical thought, especially after something like Aquinas' principle of double effect, which says if you don't intend, this is an oversimplification of it, but I don't have time to go into it more in depth. If you don't intend the evil, then it's not a sin. Okay? So if you intend the good, they may say, well, you didn't intend for the baby to die. You intended to save the mother and the baby's life. Therefore, it's not bad. Okay? And other philosophical, a Protestant ethic may say something similar. But if you, an Orthodox person has to say, no, that's not true. It's a sin and you have to do it. So the challenge for Orthodox to kind of look at morality through a pro-life lens is life is far more complex. And the reality of the soul participating in sin and the reality that sin disorients us from God, even the sins that are involuntary, even the sins that are unintentional, even the sins that are unknown, that they can disorient us from God, we have to be aware that those are sins too. So if you do an early separation, even with the intent of saving the baby's life and saving the mom's life, and baby dies, it's still sin. But it's a sin of necessity. You would actually be committing worse sin if you watched mom and baby die. By that inaction, you're actually making a moral choice, right? So, but it is something, thanks be to God, that the person doing that act can seek the forgiveness of the church. They're not beyond forgiveness. So my point here is, am I going to tell you that vaccines and anything that is, the HEK cell use, again, there is a tissue sample from an abortion from the 1970s. Some people will say because it's been genetically modified and it's been doesn't bring new abortions, actually those are prohibited. Making new tissue lines from abortions is actually prohibited. And that it's actually permissible. And there are Orthodox theologians and ethicists that will defend the continued use of HEK cells. I'm mediating position. I actually want an alternative to HEK cell use because I think that tangible matter matters, and I'd rather have an alternative. And if I had a choice between a medicine that never touched HEK cells and one that did, I'd choose the one that doesn't touch it. But I'm also not willing to say that HEK cell touching is the great unforgivable sin. Unlike the other tissue cultures that may have other problems, or the scientific methods that may have a problem, or the greed, or the usury, or the debauchery, or the furthering of other ethical positions. There are a lot of taints within medicine. Medicine's disoriented. So is the world. So is the world. So I wish I could, in many ways, I envy the OTSA statement, because they made a very clear statement of you can do this. And many times, I wish that I was in a more paternalistic age of medicine. Instead of trying to teach people all the things of medicine that they may not understand, that I could cover it. I'll take on that burden for you, and this is what we're doing. And I think that may be the motive around OTSA. They were saying, we know that's more complex than this, but we need to be clear. Because when you get the harder, qualified answer that I'm giving, it brings confusion. And I don't want you to be confused. I'm saying that HEK cell use is important. But we can't escape, there's not an option for a medicine that doesn't use it. If there is, which there are some vaccines that are in development that don't use HEK cell use, kinda. I'll warn you on this one. Because the group that developed the first coding for the sequence, the genetic sequence, use it too. I mean, in science, most scientists don't even know that HEK cells are what they're from. They don't know. They're just using it. And I can tell you some of us in the pro-life community and that work for institutes that have talked about HEK cells for decades, we sometimes regret that we made it public that the vaccines did. I mean, sometimes. Because none of the groups I work with wanted to become anti-vaccine, but we are anti-HEK. And, what is made manifest is made light. So when you're ever in a dilemma of whether you should be transparent or not transparent, you should generally be transparent. And even though I wish it could be a different context, I wish we could explain it better, I wish the more sensational pro-life websites that took it and made all kinds of claims that aren't true, I wish that wasn't true, but whatever is made manifest is made as light. And so being transparent, I think, is best. I can't tell you that HEK cells are pure or they're not involved in sin. What I can say is you can't escape them. Inasmuch as we try to distance ourselves from sin knowingly, you're now educated beyond the vaccine exceptionalism. So vaccines are not exceptional. They really are vaccines. It really is an inoculation. Thank God they're not like the vaccines of old that were far more dangerous. This one does have real dangers. I'm not trying to minimize that. I'm not trying to exaggerate or see through rose-colored glasses. There are dangers, there are risks. But if you partake of any diagnostic test, if you partake of almost any supplement, vitamin D is tested on HEK cells. I can show you the studies. I was at a monastery that was having struggles with this, and I asked, what medicines do you take? And I said, I will find the study with HEK cells on each one of those. What fragrances are in your, what soaps do you use? Let's look at the flavors in your coffee mate. Unfortunately, we live in a fallen world, and HEK cells are now part of that taint. And what I'm telling you is that those who are saying that is beyond the mercy of God are committing a blasphemy. I'm not willing to say that it's not sin, but I'm not willing to say that it is an unforgivable sin. And some seem to be saying that. Should we distance ourselves from sin? Yes. But we have to also realize our finitude, the lack of our ability to distance ourselves from all sin. We can't do it. And this isn't one for us to run off a cliff for, or to be swallowed into a cleft, for God to take us to avoid an unavoidable sin. Our purity is not so tainted that we can't partake of the holy mysteries after receiving the healing of God. Sometimes we do. I mean, if you read hagiography, sometimes there are things that it's better to be swallowed in a cleft of a rock, better to run off the side of a cliff. Those aren't suicides. That's something different. I don't suggest them because most of you aren't going to be holy enough to be able to discern that at the moment. But there are things that are so grievous of sin that we avoid them at all costs. We ask for God to take us, lest we bear some great sin. But this isn't it. Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Nash, thank you very much for a most intriguing, edifying, gripping presentation. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your attention and endurance. I hope that for each of you, this was at least provoking, if not thought-provoking, and I ask God to grant us what you have asked him to grant us, which is his mercy, and to be charitable to one another. We can enjoy some refreshments together after we sing It Is Truly Meet. You're welcome to speak with Dr. Nash for a few minutes as we take our leave for the evening. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Nash, and let's pray.
Without corruption thou gavest birth to